The rain was coming down hard that November evening. The kind of rain that makes you want to stay inside with a hot cup of tea and forget about the world outside. Margaret was tired. It had been a long day at the community center, and all she wanted was to lock up and go upstairs to her small apartment. She was checking the windows one last time when she heard it. A loud banging on the glass doors, not a polite knock. This was desperate. The kind of sound that makes your heart jump into your throat. Margaret turned around and froze. Through the rain-streaked glass, she could see a man. He was young, maybe in his late 20s, and he was leaning against the door like he might fall down any second. But that wasn't what made Margaret's blood run cold. His clothes were dark with something that looked like blood. A lot of blood. Her feet wouldn't move at first. Every reasonable thought in her head was screaming at her to call the police right now. Don't open that door. You don't know this man. He could be dangerous, but then she saw it. Pressed against his chest, wrapped in a dirty blanket, was a baby. A tiny baby. And the bundle was moving. Margaret had worked with troubled families for over 20 years. She'd seen situations that would make most people cry. She'd learned to trust her instincts, and right now, her instincts were telling her something important. This man wasn't dangerous. He was terrified. Her hand shook as she pulled out her keys and unlocked the door. The man almost fell inside the moment she opened it. Up close, she could see he was barely holding on. His face was pale, covered in sweat despite the cold rain. His breathing was rough and quick. "Please," he managed to say. His voice was barely a whisper. "Please help her." And then his legs gave out. He started to collapse, but even as he fell, his arms stayed wrapped protectively around the baby. Margaret rushed forward and helped lower him to the ground. The baby started crying. A thin, weak cry that told Margaret this little one hadn't been fed in a while. The man's eyes were closing. He was losing consciousness, but he forced them open one more time and looked directly at Margaret. "They killed her mother," he whispered. "They'll come for the baby. Please don't let them take her." Then his eyes rolled back and he passed out completely. Margaret knelt there on the cold floor, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The baby was crying louder now. She gently took the bundle from the unconscious man's arms. The blanket fell away slightly and Margaret saw a tiny face. A beautiful baby girl, maybe 3 or 4 months old. She had dark hair and the biggest brown eyes Margaret had ever seen. "Shh, shh, it's okay," Margaret whispered, rocking the baby gently. But her mind was racing. What had she just gotten herself into? She looked at the man lying on her floor. Now that she could see him better, she noticed he was injured. Blood was seeping through his shirt on the left shoulder. Not a huge amount, but enough to be serious. And there was more blood on his clothes. Too much to all be his own. Margaret had a choice to make, and she had to make it fast. The right thing, the legal thing, was to call 911 immediately. Get this man to a hospital. Let the police sort out what had happened. That's what any sensible person would do. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he'd protected the baby even as he collapsed. Maybe it was the pure terror she'd seen in his eyes. Or maybe it was something deeper. Something she didn't want to think about too much. 10 years ago, Margaret had lost her own daughter. A car accident that had also taken her husband. Since then, she'd thrown herself into her work, helping other families, other children. But she'd built walls around her heart. Thick walls. She'd promised herself she'd never get too attached again, never let anyone get close enough to hurt her like that. Now here was this baby crying in her arms, and here was this stranger, bleeding on her floor, who'd risked everything to protect a child. Margaret made her decision. She would wait. She would hear the whole story before she called anyone. It might be foolish. It might even be dangerous, but her gut was telling her that this man and this baby needed more than what the system could offer right now. She gently laid the baby down on the soft couch in her office, surrounding her with cushions so she couldn't roll. Then she went back to the man. She checked his pulse. It was fast but steady. She pulled up his shirt to look at the wound on his shoulder. It looked like a graze. A bullet had skimmed across his skin, tearing it open but not going deep. It needed to be cleaned and bandaged, but it wasn't life-threatening. The baby was still crying. Margaret quickly went to the small kitchen area in the center. She always kept some emergency supplies. Formula, diapers, baby food. You never knew when a family in crisis might walk through the door needing help. She prepared a bottle with shaking hands. When she picked up the baby and offered her the formula, the little one latched onto it desperately. She was starving. As the baby drank, she stared up at Margaret with those big brown eyes, and something inside Margaret's chest cracked open. A feeling she'd locked away for a decade came flooding back. The man on the floor groaned. He was starting to wake up. Margaret kept feeding the baby with one hand and knelt down beside him with the other. "It's okay," she said softly. "You're safe here. The baby's safe. I'm going to help you." His eyes fluttered open. For a moment he looked confused, then panicked. He tried to sit up quickly and gasped in pain from his shoulder. "The baby," he said urgently. "Where is she?" "She's right here," Margaret said, showing him. "She's okay. She's eating." Some of the panic left his face. He slumped back down exhausted. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for not calling the police." "I didn't say I wasn't going to call them," Margaret replied carefully. "But first, you're going to tell me exactly what happened. And you're going to tell me the truth." The man nodded slowly. "My name is Daniel," he said. "And that baby is my niece. Her name is Lily, and we're both in terrible danger." Margaret looked at the baby in her arms, now drinking peacefully, her little hand wrapped around Margaret's finger. Then she looked at Daniel, this bleeding stranger who'd appeared at her door like something out of a nightmare. "Okay, Daniel," she said quietly. "Start from the beginning, and don't leave anything out." Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, Margaret's simple, quiet life was about to become very complicated. She didn't know it yet, but the decision she'd made in these few minutes would change everything. For her, for Daniel, and for little Lily. Sometimes life doesn't give you time to think things through. Sometimes you just have to open the door and deal with whatever comes through it, even if it arrives covered in blood, clutching a baby, and carrying secrets that could put everyone in danger. Margaret had opened that door. Now there was no going back. Margaret helped Daniel to the small medical room at the back of the community center. It wasn't much, just a room with a cot, some basic first aid supplies, and a sink. But it would have to do. She kept Lily in one arm while helping Daniel walk with the other. He was weak, stumbling with every step. Once she got him settled on the cot, Margaret laid Lily down in a plastic storage bin she'd lined with soft blankets. It wasn't a proper crib, but the baby seemed content, her belly full now, her eyes getting heavy with sleep. "Okay," Margaret said, turning to Daniel. "Let me see that shoulder." She helped him out of his jacket and shirt. The blood had dried in some places and was still wet in others. As she cleaned the wound with antiseptic, Daniel hissed in pain but didn't pull away. Margaret had taken basic medical training years ago, back when she worked for Child Protective Services. She knew enough to handle minor injuries, and this, thankfully, was minor. The bullet had just grazed him, tearing through the skin but not hitting anything vital. "You're lucky," she said as she worked. A few inches to the right and this would be a very different conversation. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Lucky. Right." As Margaret bandaged his shoulder, she noticed something. His hands were shaking, and there was more blood on his jeans, his shoes. Too much blood to all be from his shoulder wound. "Daniel," she said carefully, "where did all this other blood come from?" His face went pale. He looked away, staring at the wall. "My sister," he said quietly. "It's from my sister." Margaret's stomach dropped. "Tell me what happened, all of it." Daniel took a deep breath. When he started talking, his voice was flat, like he was trying to distance himself from his own words. "Her name was Rachel. She was my older sister. We weren't close, haven't been for years. Family drama, you know. Arguments about stupid things that seemed important at the time. I hadn't talked to her in almost 3 years." He paused, swallowing hard. 2 weeks ago, she called me out of nowhere. She sounded scared. Really scared. She said she needed to see me, that it was urgent. I almost didn't go. I was busy with work, and part of me was still angry about our last fight. But something in her voice made me change my mind. Margaret finished with the bandage and sat down in the chair across from him. "What did she tell you?" "She told me she'd been living under a different name for the past 1.5 years. She was in witness protection. She'd seen something she wasn't supposed to see, and her life was in danger because of it." Margaret felt her heart beat faster. Witness protection. This was bigger than she'd thought. What did she witness? A murder, Daniel said. She was working late at a restaurant downtown. It was after closing and she was in the back office doing paperwork. She heard voices in the alley behind the building, angry voices, then gunshots. She looked out the window and saw two men standing over a body. They saw her looking. He rubbed his face with his good hand. She ran, called the police, identified the men. They were part of some organized crime group. Low-level guys, but connected to bigger players. The police put her in witness protection until the trial. And she had Lily during this time? Daniel nodded. Lily's father wasn't in the picture. He'd left before Rachel even knew she was pregnant. So it was just Rachel and Lily, living in a small apartment across town with a new name, new identity. Federal marshals checking in on her. She said she felt safe. She thought everything would be okay once the trial was over. But something went wrong, Margaret said. Someone found her. I don't know how. She didn't know how. But 2 hours ago, men showed up at her apartment. She called me screaming. I could hear Lily crying in the background. I could hear men yelling, breaking down her door. She begged me to come, to help her. Daniel's voice cracked. I was 20 minutes away. I drove like crazy, running red lights, not caring about anything except getting there. When I got to her building, I heard gunshots from her floor. I ran up the stairs. Her door was wide open. He stopped, his whole body trembling now. Margaret wanted to tell him he didn't have to continue, but she needed to hear it. She needed to know what she was dealing with. There was blood everywhere, Daniel continued. Rachel was on the floor. She'd been shot twice. Once in the chest, once in the stomach. She was still alive, but barely. The men were gone. They must have heard me coming and ran. Tears were streaming down his face now. She pushed Lily into my arms. The baby was screaming. Rachel was trying to talk, trying to tell me something. She kept saying, "Run, take her, keep her safe, they'll come back, don't trust anyone." Then she grabbed my hand and said, "Make sure she knows I loved her." And then, he couldn't finish. He didn't have to. Margaret felt tears in her own eyes. She looked over at Lily, sleeping peacefully in her makeshift bed, completely unaware that her mother was gone, that her whole world had just been destroyed. I grabbed some of Lily's things, Daniel said. Diapers, clothes, whatever I could find. I heard sirens coming. I knew I should wait for the police, I knew I should. But Rachel's last words kept echoing in my head. Don't trust anyone. Keep her safe. So you ran, Margaret said. I ran. I didn't know where to go. I just started driving, then I saw your community center. The lights were still on. I thought maybe, just maybe, someone there could help. Someone who cared about kids and families. I didn't have a plan. I couldn't let them take Lily. Not until I knew she'd be safe. Margaret sat back in her chair, trying to process everything. This was serious. This was dangerous. She was harboring someone who'd fled a crime scene. Someone who was wanted for questioning at the very least. And this baby was now an orphan. Possibly still in danger from whoever had killed her mother. The smart thing would be to call the police right now. Let them handle it. That's what anyone with common sense would do. But Margaret kept thinking about Rachel's last words. Don't trust anyone. If someone had leaked her location, if someone inside the system had betrayed her, then calling the police might put Lily in even more danger. Do you have any proof? Margaret asked. About the witness protection. About what? Your sister saw? Daniel reached into his pocket with his good hand and pulled out a phone. This is Rachel's phone. She gave it to me along with Lily. She said there are messages on here from the federal marshals, documents about the case. Everything I'd need to prove she was telling the truth. He handed the phone to Margaret. She turned it on. It was locked, but Daniel gave her the password. As she scrolled through the messages and files, her heart sank. It was all true. Everything Daniel had said was documented right here. There were messages from marshals checking in on Rachel. Court documents about the murder case. News articles about the crime. And most chilling of all, there were recent messages from Rachel to one of the marshals, saying she thought she was being watched. That she'd seen the same car outside her apartment 3 times. That she was scared. The marshal had told her not to worry. That she was safe. That no one knew where she was. But someone had known. Someone had found her. And now she was dead. Margaret looked at Daniel, then at Lily. This baby girl had lost her mother tonight. And if the wrong people found her, she might lose her life too. I'll help you, Margaret heard herself say. But we need to be smart about this. We need a plan. Daniel looked at her with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't know us. Margaret didn't have a good answer. Or maybe she did, but it was too complicated to explain. How do you tell a stranger that you lost your own daughter 10 years ago? That you've been living half a life ever since? That sometimes, when the universe gives you a chance to save someone, you have to take it even if it's crazy? Because that baby deserves a chance, Margaret finally said, and because your sister's last wish was for her to be safe, we're going to make sure that happens. She stood up and looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. They didn't have much time. By morning, the police would be looking for Daniel. They'd be investigating Rachel's murder, and whoever had killed her might be looking for Lily. You need to rest, Margaret told Daniel. That shoulder needs time to heal. We'll stay here tonight. In the morning, we'll figure out our next move. Daniel nodded, exhaustion written all over his face. Margaret helped him lie down on the cot. Within minutes, he was asleep. She picked up Lily, who was still sleeping soundly, and held her close. The baby was so small, so innocent. She had no idea how much danger she was in. No idea that her life had changed forever tonight. I promise you, Margaret whispered to the sleeping baby. I won't let anything happen to you. Whatever it takes. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. But Margaret knew a storm was coming, a much bigger storm, and she was right in the middle of it. Margaret didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. Every sound made her jump. Every car that passed outside made her heart race. She sat in her office chair, Lily sleeping in her arms, watching the security camera feed on her computer screen. When morning light started creeping through the windows, Daniel woke up. He groaned as he sat up, his shoulder clearly hurting. But his first words were about the baby. Is she okay? She's fine, Margaret said softly. She slept through the night. I fed her once around 3 in the morning, but other than that, she was peaceful. Daniel relaxed a little. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. His face was pale, but there was something else there too. A determination Margaret recognized. She'd seen it in the mirror after her own loss. The look of someone who'd decided to keep going no matter how much it hurt. We need to move, Margaret said. We can't stay here. My staff will be coming in around 9. If they see you, if they see the baby, there will be questions. Where do we go? My apartment. It's upstairs. Separate entrance. No one comes up there but me. We'll be safe for now. She'd already thought it all through during the long night. Her apartment was small but private. She could call in sick to work, say she needed a few days off. Her staff could handle things. They wouldn't question it. Margaret never took time off, so they'd probably be happy she was finally resting. They moved quickly. Daniel gathered the few things they had. Margaret carried Lily and led them through a back hallway to the stairs that went up to her apartment. Within minutes, they were inside, and Margaret locked the door behind them. The apartment was nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, a small living room, a tiny kitchen, but it was clean and comfortable. Margaret's personal space. She hadn't had anyone else up here in years. You take the bedroom, she told Daniel. I'll set up something for Lily out here and I'll sleep on the couch. I can't take your bed, Daniel protested. You're injured. You need proper rest. Don't argue with me, he was too tired to fight. He went into the bedroom and collapsed on the bed, asleep again within minutes. Margaret spent the morning taking care of Lily. She bathed her in the kitchen sink, changed her diaper, fed her, played with her. The baby was surprisingly easy. She didn't cry much. She just watched everything with those big, curious eyes. Around noon, Daniel emerged from the bedroom. He looked a little better, though he was moving carefully because of his shoulder. I need to know more, Margaret said once he'd eaten something. You said your sister was in witness protection. But there's more to this story, isn't there? How did those men find her? Daniel sat down at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. I've been thinking about that all night. Rachel was careful. She followed all the rules. She didn't contact old friends, didn't post on social media, Didn't do anything that could give away her location, but someone found her anyway. Someone inside, Margaret said. Has to be. The marshals knew where she was. The prosecutors knew. Maybe some other law enforcement. Someone leaked her location. Margaret felt a chill. If that's true, then Lily isn't safe anywhere in the system. If we call the police, if we turn her over to child services, whoever leaked your sister's location could find out where Lily is too. That's what I'm afraid of, Daniel said. That's why I ran. I know it looks bad. I know leaving the scene makes me look guilty of something. But Rachel made me promise to keep Lily safe, and I can't do that if I hand her over to the same people who failed to protect Rachel. Margaret stood up and started pacing. She was good at solving problems. That's what she did. Families came to her center with impossible situations, and she helped them find solutions. But this was different. This was dangerous. This was way out of her depth. We need information, she said. We need to know who leaked Rachel's location. We need to know if Lily is still in danger, and we need to do this without alerting anyone that we have her. Daniel pulled out Rachel's phone again. There might be something in here. Messages, call logs, something that could give us a clue. They spent the next several hours going through everything on the phone. Messages between Rachel and her marshal, emails from the prosecutor's office, notes Rachel had made about the case. It was all heartbreaking. Reading Rachel's messages, seeing her fear grow over the past few weeks, knowing that no one had taken her seriously. Then Daniel found something. Look at this. It was a message from 3 days ago. Rachel had written to her marshal, I saw Detective Kowalski today, at the grocery store. He was one of the officers who took my statement. Why would he be here? This city is 2 hours from where I gave my statement. Did you tell him where I was? The marshal had replied, Don't worry. Some officers were briefed on your location for security purposes. It's normal. You're safe, but Rachel hadn't felt safe. She'd written back, But why was he following me? He was in the next aisle watching me. When I left, he left too. His car followed me for 3 blocks before turning away. The marshal's response was dismissive. You're stressed. The trial is coming up. It's natural to be paranoid. Detective Kowalski is a good cop. He wouldn't do anything to compromise your safety. That's it, Daniel said. That's the leak. This Detective Kowalski. Margaret wasn't so sure. Maybe. Or maybe Rachel was being watched and she was right to be scared. But we can't know for certain based on this alone. Then what do we do? Margaret made a decision. I have a friend. Someone I used to work with when I was in Child Protective Services. He moved to the FBI about 5 years ago. He's a good person, someone I trust. Can we trust him with this? I don't know, Margaret admitted. But I think we have to try. We can't do this alone. We need someone with resources, someone who can investigate without tipping off the wrong people. It took Margaret 2 days to work up the courage to make the call. 2 days of hiding in her apartment with Daniel and Lily. 2 days of jumping at every sound. 2 days of watching the news, seeing reports about Rachel's murder, about police looking for Daniel as a person of interest. When she finally called her old friend, she kept it vague. I need to meet with you alone. It's about a case. A sensitive case. I can't talk about it over the phone. He agreed to meet her. They chose a parking garage downtown late at night. Like something out of a spy movie. Margaret almost laughed at how ridiculous it all seemed. But there was nothing funny about the situation. She left Daniel at the apartment with Lily. She drove to the parking garage, her hands sweating on the steering wheel. When she arrived, her friend was already there, leaning against his car. His name was Robert Chen. They'd worked together years ago, and he'd been at her husband and daughter's funeral. He was one of the few people from her old life she still kept in touch with, though they only exchanged Christmas cards these days. Margaret, he said warmly, it's good to see you. Though I have to admit this is a strange way to meet. I know. I'm sorry. But I need your help with something. And I need you to hear me out before you say anything. His smile faded. This sounds serious. It is. Margaret took a deep breath and told him everything. About Daniel showing up at her door. About Rachel's murder. About Lily. About the witness protection that had failed. About her suspicion that someone inside law enforcement had leaked Rachel's location. Robert listened without interrupting. His expression grew more concerned with every word. When Margaret finished, Robert was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You know you've broken about a dozen laws, right? harboring a fugitive, interfering with a murder investigation, taking custody of a child without authorization. I know. You could go to prison for this, I know. And you did it anyway. Margaret met his eyes. That baby lost her mother, and I think she's still in danger. I couldn't just hand her over to the system and hope for the best. Not when that system failed her mother so completely. Robert sighed and rubbed his face. This is a mess, Margaret. A huge mess. Can you help us? He was quiet for another long moment. Then he nodded. I'll look into it, quietly. I'll check into Rachel's case, into the marshal who was handling her protection, into this Detective Kowalski. But Margaret, you need to understand something. If there is a leak, if someone inside did betray Rachel, then investigating this could put all of us in danger. I know. But we have to try. And what about Daniel? The police are looking for him. They think he might have killed his own sister. He didn't, I'm sure of it. Your certainty doesn't mean much in a court of law. Then we need to find proof. We need to find out who really killed Rachel and why. Robert looked up at the ceiling of the parking garage, shaking his head. I must be crazy for agreeing to this. Probably, Margaret said. But you're a good person. And that baby needs good people right now. He looked back at her. Where are you keeping them? My apartment. Above the community center. Okay, stay there. Don't go anywhere. Don't contact anyone else. I'll start digging into this and get back to you in a day or two. In the meantime, keep your heads down. Margaret felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She wasn't alone in this anymore. She had help. Thank you, Robert, really. Don't thank me yet. This could all blow up in our faces. Margaret drove back to her apartment, her mind spinning. She'd crossed a line tonight. There was no going back now. She was committed to this path wherever it led. When she got home, Daniel was pacing the living room D. 3 days passed. 3 long days of waiting. Margaret told her staff she was sick. Daniel stayed hidden in the apartment. And Lily grew more comfortable with both of them, sleeping better, eating well, even laughing when Daniel made silly sounds. During those quiet days, Margaret and Daniel talked. Really talked. Not just about the situation they were in, but about their lives. About who they were before everything went wrong. Daniel told her about his work as a journalist. He wrote mostly local stories, nothing exciting. Community events, city council meetings, small business profiles. He'd always dreamed of doing bigger investigative pieces, but life had gotten in the way. Rachel used to tease me about it, he said one afternoon while feeding Lily a bottle. She'd say I was wasting my talent on boring stories. She wanted me to chase the big scandals, expose corruption, make a difference. But I liked my quiet life. I wasn't brave enough for the big stories. He looked down at Lily. Funny how things turn out. Now I'm living the biggest story of my life and I can't write about it. Margaret understood more than he knew. She'd had big dreams once, too. She was going to change the world one family at a time. She was going to fix broken systems and protect every child who needed help. But then her own family had been broken and suddenly all those big dreams seemed meaningless. On the 4th night, while Daniel was asleep and Lily was down for the night, Margaret did something she hadn't done in years. She pulled out an old photo album from the back of her closet. The pictures hurt to look at. Her wedding day, bright and full of hope. Her daughter's first birthday, cake all over her face. Family vacations, holidays, ordinary moments that had seemed so simple at the time. Her daughter's last school picture, taken just 2 months before the accident. She'd been 8 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself. Margaret traced her finger over her daughter's face. I miss you, sweetheart, she whispered. Every single day. She didn't hear Daniel come into the room. When he spoke, she jumped. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. Margaret quickly wiped her eyes. It's okay. I thought you were sleeping. I heard you get up. I wanted to make sure everything was all right. He paused, looking at the photo album. Is that your family? Margaret hesitated. She didn't talk about this. Ever. But something about the quiet darkness, about everything they'd been through together, made her want to share. Yes, that's my husband, Tom, and that's my daughter, Amy. She would have been 18 now. Daniel sat down beside her on the couch. What happened? Car accident. 10 years ago. A truck driver fell asleep at the wheel, crossed the median, hit them head on. Tom died instantly. Amy held on for 3 days in the hospital, but her injuries were too severe. I was at work when it happened. I got the call and rushed to the hospital, but by the time I got there, Tom was already gone. I spent 3 days sitting next to Amy's bed, holding her hand, begging her to wake up. But she never did. I'm so sorry, Daniel said softly. Margaret closed the album. I was a different person before that. I was happy. I loved my job. I thought I could handle anything. But losing them broke something in me. I couldn't go back to Child Protective Services. Every case felt too personal. Every child reminded me of Amy. Every struggling family reminded me that I couldn't even keep my own family safe. So you started the community center. Yeah. It was smaller, more manageable. I could help people without getting too close. I could make a difference without risking my heart again. I built a nice, safe, controlled life. No attachments, no pain. She looked toward the bedroom where Lily was sleeping. And then you showed up at my door with a bleeding shoulder and a baby. And all my careful walls started crumbling. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Do you regret it? Helping us. Margaret thought about the question. Did she regret it? Her life was in danger now. She'd broken laws. She could lose everything. But when she thought about Lily's smile, about the way the baby reached for her in the morning, about the feeling of having purpose again, having people who needed her. No, she said. I don't regret it. I'm terrified, but I don't regret it. Can I ask you something? Daniel said. Why did you help us, really? You could have called the police that first night. You should have. But you didn't. Why? Margaret had been asking herself the same question. I think it's because I saw myself in you. When you collapsed at my door, holding Lily like she was the most precious thing in the world, protecting her even though you were hurt and scared. That's what a parent does. That's what I would have done for Amy, and I couldn't turn away from that. She paused, choosing her words carefully. After I lost Amy, I felt like I'd failed at the most important job I'd ever have. Being a mother. Even though the accident wasn't my fault, even though there was nothing I could have done differently, I still felt like I'd failed her. Like I should have somehow protected her. But you couldn't have known, Daniel said. I know that. Logically, I know that. But the heart doesn't always listen to logic. For 10 years, I've been living with this guilt, this feeling that I should have done more. And then you showed up, giving me a chance to protect a child who actually needs protecting. A child who's actually in danger. Maybe I can't save everyone. Maybe I couldn't save Amy, but maybe I can save Lily. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Daniel spoke again. Rachel and I had a stupid fight. That's why we stopped talking. She borrowed money from me to help with some bills. She promised to pay me back and then she didn't. I got angry. I said some terrible things about how she was always irresponsible, always making bad choices. She got angry back, said I was judgmental and cold. We both said things we didn't mean. He rubbed his face, and then we just stopped talking. 3 years. 3 years of silence over a few $100s and some harsh words. And now she's gone and I can never take any of it back. I can never tell her I'm sorry. I can never tell her that I love her. She knew, Margaret said gently. The fact that you were the person she called when she was scared, the person she trusted with her daughter, that tells you everything. She knew you loved her. I wasted so much time, Daniel said, being angry, being proud. And for what? Margaret put her hand on his shoulder. You can't change the past. None of us can. But you're here now. You're taking care of Lily. You're doing what Rachel asked you to do. That matters. I never thought I'd be a parent, Daniel admitted. I always figured maybe someday when I was older, more settled. I wasn't ready for this. I'm still not ready. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. Nobody's ever ready, Margaret said with a small smile. I had 9 months to prepare for Amy, and I still felt like I had no idea what I was doing when she was born. Parenting isn't about being ready. It's about showing up even when you're scared, and you're showing up for Lily every day. Daniel looked at her. We make quite a pair, don't we? The broken journalist and the grieving mother trying to save a baby from people who want to hurt her. When you put it that way, we sound like characters in a bad movie. Or a good one, depends on how the story ends. Margaret hoped for a good ending, but she was a realist. She knew that sometimes, no matter how hard you try, things don't work out the way you hope. Sometimes people you love die in car accidents. Sometimes witnesses in protection get murdered. Sometimes there are no happy endings. But sometimes, just sometimes, broken people find each other at exactly the right moment, and maybe together they're strong enough to face whatever comes next. The next morning, Robert finally called. Margaret's heart raced as she answered the phone. "I found something," he said without preamble. "Can you meet me?" "Same place as before, tonight at 10. "I'll be there." That evening, Margaret drove back to the parking garage. Robert was waiting, but this time he looked worried. "This is bigger than we thought," he said as soon as she got close. Rachel wasn't the first witness to be compromised. There have been 3 other cases in the past 2 years where witnesses in protection had their locations leaked. 2 of them were killed. The third disappeared and hasn't been seen since. Margaret felt cold. So there's definitely someone inside. Yes, and they're still there, still active. I've started looking into Detective Kowalski. He was at the scene when Rachel gave her initial statement. He was one of the officers briefed on her location. And get this, he was also involved in 2 of the other 3 compromised cases. So it is him. Maybe. But he's not acting alone. Someone higher up has to be protecting him. Someone with the authority to access witness protection records and the power to cover their tracks. What do? I'm building a case. But it's going to take time. These people are careful. They've been doing this for years without getting caught. If I move too fast, if I alert them that someone's investigating, they'll disappear. And worse, they might come after you and Lily. How much time do we need? A few weeks at least. Maybe a month. Can you keep Daniel and Lily hidden that long? Margaret thought about it. A month of hiding. A month of living in fear. A month of lying to her staff, her friends, everyone. It would be hard. Maybe impossible, but what choice did they have? "We'll manage," she said. "Just find these people. Make sure Lily will be safe." "I will. I promise. But Margaret, you need to be careful. If anyone finds out you're helping Daniel, if anyone discovers you have..." The days turned into weeks. Margaret's apartment, once a lonely space filled with memories of the past, became a home. A real home with life and laughter and the constant needs of a baby. Lily was growing fast. At 4 months old, she was starting to recognize faces, respond to voices, reach for things. She'd light up whenever Margaret or Daniel walked into the room. Her favorite game was peekaboo, and she'd squeal with delight every time Daniel uncovered his face. Daniel had changed too. The terrified, bleeding man who'd collapsed at Margaret's door was gone. In his place was someone more confident, more present. He'd learned how to change diapers without making a mess. He could prepare a bottle in under a minute. He knew exactly how to hold Lily to make her stop crying, exactly what funny face would make her laugh. Margaret watched this transformation with a mixture of joy and sadness. Joy because Daniel was becoming exactly what Lily needed, sadness because she knew how fragile it all was. At any moment, everything could fall apart. They'd developed a routine. Margaret would wake up early, check the security cameras, make coffee. Daniel would get up when Lily woke up, usually around 7. He'd change her, feed her, play with her while Margaret got ready for the day. Then Margaret would take over with Lily while Daniel worked on his laptop, researching everything he could find about Rachel's case, about the crime family she'd witnessed, about Detective Kowalski. Margaret had gone back to work at the community center, but only part-time. She told her staff she was dealing with some personal health issues and needed to take it easy. They were understanding, never asking too many questions. She'd come down for a few hours in the afternoon, handle the most urgent matters, then go back upstairs to her apartment. It was exhausting, living this double life, pretending everything was normal when nothing was normal. But it was also strangely wonderful. For the first time in 10 years, Margaret felt truly alive. One evening, about 3 weeks into their arrangement, something shifted between Margaret and Daniel. They were sitting on the couch after putting Lily to bed. Daniel was working on his laptop, and Margaret was reading a book. Comfortable silence had become normal between them. "I found something," Daniel said suddenly. Margaret looked up. "About the case? Sort of. I've been going through old news articles trying to understand the crime family Rachel witnessed. And I found this." He turned his laptop toward her. It was an article from a year ago about a charity event. In the photo, several local business people were posed together, smiling for the camera. Daniel pointed to one man in particular. "That's Vincent Torres. He's the head of the crime family. The man Rachel saw commit murder was his nephew. Torres has been operating in this city for 20 years, but he's careful. He keeps his hands clean, runs his operation through layers of other people. Police have never been able to touch him. What does this have to do with Lily? I think Vincent Torres is the one who ordered the hit on Rachel. And I think he's still looking for Lily. Margaret felt cold. Why would he care about a baby? Because Lily is leverage. Think about it. Rachel was the star witness in the case against Torres's nephew. With Rachel dead, the prosecution's case is weaker but not gone. They have Rachel's recorded testimony. They have the evidence she provided. The trial could still happen. He paused, his face grim. But if Torres has Lily, he could use her. He could threaten the prosecutors, the judge, the jury. He could force people to do what he wants. A baby is the perfect pressure point. That's horrible. That's why we can't let anyone know where she is. Not until Torres is behind bars. Not until we know for certain that Lily will be safe. Margaret looked toward the bedroom where Lily slept, peaceful and unaware of the danger surrounding her. How long will that take? I don't know. Months, maybe. The trial keeps getting delayed. Torres's lawyers are good. They keep finding ways to postpone, to challenge evidence, to drag things out. Margaret felt the weight of it settling on her shoulders. Months. They'd have to keep this up for months, maybe longer. We can do this, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. We'll keep her safe. Whatever it takes. Daniel closed his laptop and looked at her. Really looked at her. Why are you doing this, Margaret? I asked you before, but you didn't really answer. You could have called the police that first night. You could have turned us in at any point. You still could, but you don't. Why? Margaret thought about her answer. She'd thought about this question a lot over the past few weeks. When I lost my daughter, she said slowly, I lost more than just her. I lost my faith in the world. I stopped believing that good things could happen, that people could be trusted, that life was worth fully living. I went through the motions, but I was just empty. She looked at him. And then you showed up. You, the stranger who'd just lost his sister, who'd been shot, who had every reason to be selfish and run away. But you didn't. You held on to that baby and you asked for help, not for yourself, but for her. And I saw something I thought I'd never see again. I saw someone putting a child first, no matter the cost. You saw yourself, Daniel said quietly. Maybe. Or maybe I saw who I used to be, who I want to be again. Taking care of Lily, helping you, fighting for something that matters. It makes me feel alive again. It makes me feel like maybe my life still has purpose. Daniel reached over and took her hand. It was the first time they'd touched beyond the necessary brushes of daily life. His hand was warm, solid, real. You've given me something too, he said. A reason to be better than I was. I wasted years being angry at Rachel. Years I can never get back. But taking care of Lily, being here with you, it's shown me what actually matters. Family. Love. Being there for people even when it's hard. They sat like that for a long moment. Hands linked. The quiet apartment around them. It felt like a promise. Like they were in this together, truly together, no matter what came next. The moment was broken by Lily crying from the bedroom. They both laughed and Daniel stood up. I'll get her. She probably needs a diaper change. As Margaret watched him go, she realized something surprising. She was happy. Despite the danger, despite the uncertainty, despite everything that could go wrong, she was actually happy. The weeks continued to pass. Robert called every few days with updates. He was building his case slowly, carefully. He'd identified 3 other officers who might be involved in the corruption ring with Detective Kowalski. He was working with the FBI's Internal Affairs Division, but they had to be careful. If word got out that they were investigating, the corrupt officers would destroy evidence and disappear. Meanwhile, life in the apartment continued. Margaret and Daniel fell into an easy partnership. They shared cooking duties, cleaning duties, baby care duties. They learned each other's habits and quirks. Daniel liked his coffee strong and black. Margaret couldn't function without her morning shower. They both hated doing laundry but loved reading to Lily before bed. One Saturday morning, Daniel woke up early and made breakfast. Pancakes, bacon, eggs. When Margaret came into the kitchen, she stopped in surprise. What's this? Breakfast. Sit down. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. You do so much for us, for me. I wanted to do something for you. As they ate together, Lily in her high chair making a mess of mashed banana, Margaret felt something dangerous. She felt like this was her family. Like this was where she belonged. She tried to push the feeling away. This was temporary. This arrangement, this life, it couldn't last. Eventually the case would be resolved. Eventually Daniel and Lily would move on with their lives. They'd get a place of their own, start fresh somewhere safe, and Margaret would go back to her quiet, controlled existence. But the feeling wouldn't go away. And as she watched Daniel make airplane noises to get Lily to eat her banana, as she saw the love in his eyes when he looked at the baby, as she felt the warmth of being part of something bigger than herself, she realized the truth. She didn't want this to end. She didn't want to go back to her old life. She wanted this messy, complicated, beautiful thing they'd created together. One evening, about 5 weeks after that first night, Margaret was giving Lily a bath in the kitchen sink. The baby was splashing happily, soaking Margaret's shirt. Daniel was watching from the doorway, a smile on his face. "She loves bath time," he said. "She loves making a mess," Margaret replied. But she was smiling too. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said. "Sure. What happens after? When this is all over, when it's safe, what happens to us?" Margaret's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Lily will need a permanent home. I'll need to figure out my life. You'll want your apartment back. What happens?" Margaret lifted Lily out of the sink and wrapped her in a towel. The baby cooed happily, reaching for Margaret's face. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I haven't let myself think that far ahead." "I have," Daniel said. "I've been thinking about it a lot, and I keep coming back to the same thought. I don't want to leave. I don't want to take Lily and go somewhere else. I want to stay here, with you." Margaret's breath caught. "Daniel, I know it's complicated. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. But Margaret, you're the best person I've ever met. The way you care for Lily, the way you've sacrificed everything to keep us safe, the way you've helped me become the person I needed to be. I don't want to lose that. I don't want—" Everything changed on a Tuesday morning in early December. Margaret was downstairs at the community center, handling some paperwork in her office. It was one of her short work days. She'd be back upstairs with Daniel and Lily in an hour. She was reviewing the monthly budget when something caught her eye through her office window. A black car was parked across the street. It had been there for about 20 minutes, engine running, nobody getting out. Maybe it was nothing. People parked on this street all the time, but something felt wrong. Margaret had learned to trust her instincts over the years, and right now her instincts were screaming at her. She pulled out her phone and texted Daniel. "Black car outside. Watching the building. Stay inside. Don't come to the windows." His response came immediately. "Should I call Robert?" "Not yet. Might be nothing. But be ready to move if I say so." Margaret tried to focus on her work, but her eyes kept drifting to the window. The car was still there. Still running. Still watching. Then her staff member, Julie, knocked on her door. "Margaret, there's a man here to see you. He says it's about a family that needs help, but he won't give me any details." Margaret's stomach dropped. "What does he look like?" "Middle-aged white guy wearing a nice suit. He seems official. Maybe a social worker or something?" "Tell him I'll be right there." Margaret's hands were shaking as she stood up. This could be nothing, or this could be everything. She took a deep breath and walked to the reception area. The man was standing by the front desk, looking around the community center with casual interest. He was exactly as Julie had described. Neat suit, polished shoes, professional demeanor. He looked like 1,000 other bureaucrats Margaret had met over the years. But when he turned to face her, she saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. This man wasn't here to ask for help. He was here for something else. "Margaret Chen," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Detective Brian Kowalski. I was hoping we could talk." Margaret forced her face to stay neutral even though her heart was pounding. This was the detective, the one Daniel had suspected, the one Robert was investigating. He was here in her building looking for something. She shook his hand, keeping her voice professional. "Of course, Detective. What can I help you with? Is there somewhere we can speak privately?" "My office is right here." She led him back to her office, her mind racing. Did he know? Had he somehow found out that she was hiding Daniel and Lily? Was he here to arrest her? Once they were in her office with the door closed, Detective Kowalski sat down without being invited. Margaret stayed standing, keeping the desk between them. "Ms. Chen, I'll get right to the point. I'm investigating a murder that occurred about 6 weeks ago. The victim's name was Rachel Montgomery. Ring any bells?" Margaret kept her face blank. "No, I don't think so. She was killed in her apartment. Shot twice. We're looking for her brother, Daniel Montgomery, who was at the scene. He took her infant daughter and disappeared. We believe the child may be in danger. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm not sure why you're telling me this. Kowalski leaned back in his chair, studying her. We've been checking all the community centers, shelters, and social services in the area. Places where someone with a baby might go for help. Have you seen anyone matching Daniel Montgomery's description? White male, late 20s, about 6 feet tall, brown hair? Detective, I see dozens of people every week. Lots of men with brown hair. Anyone with a baby? Someone who seemed nervous, scared, maybe injured? Margaret met his eyes steadily. No, nobody like that. They stared at each other for a long moment. Margaret could see him trying to read her, trying to figure out if she was lying. She'd learned how to keep her face neutral years ago, working with difficult cases. She used every bit of that training now. That's strange, Kowalski finally said, because we have evidence that Daniel Montgomery was in this neighborhood the night of the murder. His phone pinged off a cell tower just 3 blocks from here. Margaret's blood ran cold, but she didn't let it show. Lots of people come through this neighborhood, Detective. True, but here's what's interesting. After that night, his phone went dead. No more signals, no credit card usage, no ATM withdrawals. It's like he vanished into thin air, almost like someone is helping him hide. I wouldn't know anything about that. Kowalski stood up slowly. Ms. Chen, if you're hiding a fugitive, that's obstruction of justice. You could go to prison. And that baby, if she's in danger, every minute counts. If you know something, now is the time to tell me. Margaret held her ground. I'm sorry, Detective. I wish I could help you, but I don't know anything about this case. He walked to the door, then paused. You know what I think? I think you're a good person who wants to help people. And I think someone came to you with a sad story and you believed them. But Ms. Chen, Daniel Montgomery is not what he seems. He's dangerous. And that baby needs to be in protective custody before something terrible happens. If I see anyone matching that description, I'll be sure to call the police. Kowalski pulled out a business card and placed it on her desk. You do that. My number is right there, day or night. As soon as he left, Margaret grabbed her phone with shaking hands. She texted Daniel, emergency. He was here. Detective Kowalski. He's looking for you. We need to move now. She didn't wait for a response. She told Julie she was feeling sick and needed to go home. Then she ran up the back stairs to her apartment, taking them 2 at a time. Daniel met her at the door, Lily in his arms, a bag already packed. I heard. I listened through the security camera audio. We need to leave. Wait, Margaret was thinking fast. Did you see where he went? Daniel pulled up the security camera feed on his laptop. The black car was still there, and now Detective Kowalski was sitting in it, talking on his phone, watching the building. He knows, Daniel said. He might not have proof yet, but he knows. Margaret's mind was racing. If they ran now, Kowalski would see them. He'd follow them. They'd be caught. But if they stayed, he might come back with a warrant. They were trapped. We need Robert, Margaret said. We need him right now. She called Robert's number. He answered on the second ring. Margaret? What's wrong? Detective Kowalski just came to my community center. He was asking about Daniel and Lily, and now he's parked outside watching the building. Robert, he knows. I don't know how, but he knows. There was a pause. Then Robert's voice came back, tight and urgent. Don't move. Don't go outside. I'm on my way. Give me 20 minutes. We might not have 20 minutes. You have to make time. If you run now, you'll be playing right into his hands. Just stay inside and wait for me. The next 20 minutes were the longest of Margaret's life. She and Daniel sat in her living room, watching the security camera feed. Kowalski's car didn't move. He just sat there waiting. Lily, oblivious to the danger, played with her toys on the floor. Margaret watched her, this innocent baby who'd become the center of everything, and felt a fierce protective rage. They couldn't let Kowalski take her. They couldn't. Finally, Robert's car pulled up. He got out and walked straight to Kowalski's vehicle. They could see him showing his FBI badge, talking to Kowalski through the car window. The conversation looked heated. Kowalski was gesturing angrily. Robert stayed calm but firm. After about 5 minutes, Kowalski started his car and drove away. Robert watched until he was out of sight, then walked into the building. Margaret buzzed him up. What did you tell him? She asked as soon as he was inside. Robert looked exhausted. I told him that he was interfering with a federal investigation. I told him that if he continued to harass you or anyone associated with this community center, I would file a formal complaint. I threw around a lot of official language and badge authority. Will that stop him? For now, maybe. But Margaret, we have a problem. Kowalski isn't working alone. I told you that. And now that he's found you, his partners are going to know too. You're not safe here anymore. Where do we go? Robert pulled out a folder. I've been working on this. I have a safe house. It's about 2 hours from here in a rural area. Nobody knows about it except me. You can stay there while I finish building my case. How long will that take? 2 weeks. Maybe 3. I'm close, Margaret. I have almost everything I need to bring charges. But I need a little more time. Daniel spoke up. What about the trial? Rachel's murder, the case against the crime family. The trial has been postponed again. Another month at least, which gives us time. But you need to disappear. All of you. Right now. Margaret looked around her apartment. This place that had been her sanctuary for 10 years. This place where she'd learned to live with her grief, where she'd rebuilt her life, and now she had to leave it. But when she looked at Lily reaching up for her with those tiny hands, the choice was clear. Okay, she said. We'll go. What do we need to do? Robert's plan was simple. He would drive them to the safe house in his car. They would take only what they absolutely needed. Margaret would leave her phone behind. Daniel would leave his laptop. No electronics that could be traced, they moved quickly. Margaret packed a bag of clothes. Daniel gathered Lily's things. Baby supplies, diapers, formula, toys. Everything a baby would need. Before they left, Margaret wrote a note to her staff. She told them she needed to take an extended leave for personal reasons. She asked them to keep the community center running. The safe house was exactly what its name suggested. Safe, but hardly a house. It was more like a cabin, small and simple, sitting at the end of a dirt road surrounded by trees. No neighbors for miles. No cell phone signal. Just quiet and isolation. Robert had stocked it with basics. Canned food, bottled water, baby supplies. There was a generator for electricity, a wood stove for heat. It was rustic, but it would work. I'll come back in 3 days with more supplies, Robert said as he helped them carry their bags inside. In the meantime, stay inside. Don't go into town. Don't contact anyone. Just wait. After he left, Margaret and Daniel stood in the middle of the small living room looking at each other. Lily was asleep in her car seat, exhausted from the drive. Well, Daniel said. This is cozy. Margaret almost laughed. It wasn't funny, but the absurdity of it all was hitting her. A month and a half ago, she'd been living a quiet, predictable life. Now she was hiding in a cabin in the woods with a man she barely knew and a baby who wasn't hers, running from corrupt cops and crime families. I need some air, she said. Will you watch Lily? Of course. Margaret stepped outside onto the small porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. It was beautiful and peaceful, the kind of place you'd come for a vacation, not to hide from people who wanted to hurt you. She heard the door open behind her. Daniel came out, closing it softly so they wouldn't wake Lily. You okay? He asked. I don't know. I keep thinking about my community center, my staff. What they must think of me just disappearing like this. They'll understand. When this is over, when you can explain, they'll understand. Will they? Will any of this make sense when it's over? Daniel leaned against the porch railing beside her. Maybe not. But you did the right thing. You saved Lily, you saved me. That has to count for something. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I've been thinking about what happens after. Like you asked me about before. What happens when this is over? And I'm scared. Because I want things I haven't let myself want in 10 years. I want a family. I want to wake up every morning and see Lily's face. I want to share my life with someone who understands me. I want all of it. But I'm terrified that wanting it will make it disappear. Daniel reached over and took her hand. I'm scared too. I never thought I'd be a father. I never thought I'd meet someone like you. And now I can't imagine my life without either of you. But Margaret, we can't live our lives afraid. We have to believe that good things can happen, even after everything we've been through. What if we're not allowed to be happy? What if the universe doesn't work that way? Then we make it work that way. We fight for it. We don't give up. Margaret squeezed his hand. When did you become so optimistic? Since I met you. They stood there as the sun finished setting, holding hands, not needing to say anything else. They'd said enough. They both knew what they wanted. Now they just had to survive long enough to get it. The next 2 weeks were strange. Time seemed to move differently in the cabin. With no phone, no internet, no connection to the outside world, each day blended into the next. They developed new routines. Margaret would make breakfast. Daniel would play with Lily. They'd take turns reading the old books that were stacked on the shelves. They'd cook dinner together, talking about everything and nothing. It was peaceful. Surprisingly so. If Margaret could forget why they were there, she could almost pretend they were a normal family on vacation. But she couldn't forget. Not really. Every sound outside made her jump. Every night she'd lie awake on the couch, listening, waiting for something bad to happen. Robert came back on the third day as promised. He brought more supplies and news. "Kowalski knows you're gone," he said. "He went back to your community center with a warrant. Your staff told him you'd left for personal reasons. He's looking for you." "What about your investigation?" Margaret asked, moving forward. "I have enough evidence now to bring charges against Kowalski and 2 other officers. But I need to coordinate with the district attorney. Get everything lined up properly. Another week, maybe 10 days. And the crime family? Vincent Torres?" Robert's face darkened. "That's the complicated part. Torres is still out there. Even if we arrest the corrupt cops, Torres himself is harder to touch. He doesn't get his hands dirty. Everything goes through intermediaries. So Lily isn't safe," Daniel said. "Even after you arrest Kowalski?" "Not immediately. But once the corrupt cops are gone, once Torres can't use them to find witnesses, the threat level drops significantly. And with Rachel's testimony on record, the case against Torres's nephew is still solid. He'll go to prison. That will hurt Torres's operation badly. It wasn't the answer they wanted, but it was realistic." Margaret appreciated Robert's honesty. After he left, Daniel paced the small cabin, agitated. This could take months, maybe years before Torres is completely out of the picture. What are we supposed to do until then? Hide forever? "We'll figure it out," Margaret said. One step at a time, but she was worried too. How long could they live like this? And what kind of life would it be for Lily? Always looking over her shoulder, always afraid. That night, after Lily was asleep, Margaret and Daniel sat by the wood stove watching the fire. They'd been quiet for a while when Daniel finally spoke. "I've been thinking about something. About Lily's future. What about it? She needs stability. She needs a real home, a real family. Not this running and hiding. And legally, I'm her guardian now. Rachel's will was clear about that. But the state hasn't officially recognized it, because I'm wanted for questioning. Everything is in limbo. What are you saying?" "I'm saying that when this is over, when the corrupt cops are arrested and we can come out of hiding, we need to make things official. We need to file the paperwork, go through the legal process, make sure Lily is protected." Margaret nodded. "That makes sense. But there's something else. I can't do this alone. I'm not enough for her. She needs more than just me." Margaret's heart started beating faster. "Daniel, I want you to be part of this. Officially. I want us to apply for custody together. I want us to be Lily's parents. Both of us." Margaret couldn't speak. This was what she wanted. Exactly what she wanted. But hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that terrified her. "Are you sure?" she finally managed to say. "We've only known each other 2 months. That's crazy. Everything about this situation is crazy. But somehow it works. We work. The 3 of us, we're a family. Not a conventional one, but a real one. And I don't want to pretend otherwise, like what if I mess it up? What if I'm not good enough?" Daniel took her hands in his. "You're already good enough. You're everything Lily needs. Everything I need. Stop being afraid of being happy, Margaret. You deserve this." Margaret felt tears running down her cheeks. "I lost my daughter. What if I lose Lily too? What if something happens and I have to go through that pain again? I don't think I could survive it. We could lose anything at any time. That's life. But we can't let fear stop us from loving people, from building something beautiful. Your daughter wouldn't want that for you. She'd want you to be happy." He was right. Margaret knew he was right. Amy had been full of life, full of love. She'd never wanted her mother to be sad. If she could see Margaret now, she'd want her to take this chance to open her heart again, to be brave. "Okay," Margaret whispered. "Yes, let's do it. Let's be Lily's parents, together." Daniel pulled her into a hug and Margaret let herself cry. Happy tears this time, healing tears. 2 days later, Robert came back again. This time his face was serious. "We have a problem." Margaret's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "The DA wants to move forward with arrests, but there's a complication. They want Daniel to testify. About finding Rachel, about what he saw that night. They need his statement to strengthen the case." "No," Daniel said immediately. If I come forward, Torres will know where I am. He'll know where Lily is. The DA is willing to offer you protection. Witness protection, just like your sister had. You mean the same witness protection that got Rachel killed? No thanks. Robert held up his hands. I understand your concern. But this would be different. It would be federal protection, with oversight. And it would only be temporary until the trial is over. How long? A few months. Maybe 6, Daniel shook his head. And what about Lily? What about Margaret? Do they go into protection too? They could. Or we could arrange for Lily to go into temporary foster care while... No. Daniel's voice was firm. Lily is not going into foster care. She stays with me. She stays with Margaret. End of discussion. Margaret stepped forward. Robert, is there any other way? Any way to make this case without Daniel's testimony? Robert looked frustrated. Maybe, but it would be weaker. The corrupt cops might walk, and if they walk, they're still out there, still dangerous. Still working for Torres, it was an impossible choice. Risk everything by having Daniel testify, or let the corrupt cops go free and live with the threat hanging over their heads forever. I need to think about this, Daniel said. We need to think about this. After Robert left, they sat in heavy silence. Lily was playing on the floor, completely unaware of the weight of the decision her family was facing. What do we do? Margaret asked quietly. I don't know. Both options are terrible. If you testify, we could lose everything. If you don't, we might never be truly safe. 6 months later, everything had changed. The trial was over. Detective Kowalski and his partners were in prison. Vincent Torres had been arrested and was awaiting his own trial. The threat that had hung over their heads for so long was finally gone. Daniel's testimony had been crucial. He'd stood in that courtroom and told the truth about what had happened to Rachel. About the corruption, the betrayal, the system that had failed to protect her. The jury had listened. The judge had listened. And justice finally had been served. But the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the small moments that had filled the past 6 months. It was Lily's first birthday party, celebrated in their little suburban house with cake and balloons and the 3 of them singing off-key. It was the day Margaret's foster care application was approved, making her officially Lily's guardian alongside Daniel. It was the night Daniel asked Margaret to marry him, with a simple ring and tears in his eyes, and she'd said yes without hesitation. It was all the ordinary, beautiful moments that made up a life. A real life, not one spent running and hiding. Now on a warm spring morning, Margaret stood in the nursery watching Lily sleep. The baby was bigger now, almost walking, babbling constantly, full of personality and life. She had Rachel's eyes. Daniel always said that. And maybe it was true. Maybe Rachel was watching over her daughter, making sure she grew up safe and loved. Hey. Daniel's voice came from the doorway. You okay? Margaret smiled. Yeah, just thinking. About how different everything is now. 6 months ago we were hiding in a cabin, terrified. Now look at us. We have a home. We have Lily. We're getting married next month. Daniel walked over and put his arm around her waist. Do you ever regret it? Taking us in that night? Your life was simple before we showed up. Simple and empty, Margaret said. You gave me my life back, Daniel. Both of you did. I have no regrets. The past few months hadn't been easy. The legal process of officially adopting Lily had been complicated. There had been court hearings, home visits, mountains of paperwork. Daniel had to clear his name officially, prove that he'd only been trying to protect his niece. Margaret had to explain why she'd hidden them, justify every decision she'd made, but in the end it had worked out. The judge had looked at Lily, happy and healthy and clearly loved. She'd looked at Margaret and Daniel, this unconventional family that had formed out of tragedy, and she'd approved the adoption. Lily was officially theirs now. Both of theirs. Margaret Chen Montgomery and Daniel Montgomery, parents to Lily Rose Montgomery. Margaret had started back at the community center 3 months ago. Her staff had welcomed her back with tears and hugs and a million questions. She'd told them as much as she could, leaving out the dangerous details but explaining that she'd been helping a family in crisis. They'd understood. That's what the center was for, after all. Helping families. Daniel had taken a job at a local newspaper. Not the glamorous investigative journalism he'd once dreamed about, but honest work that let him be home for dinner every night. He'd written one big story, though. About Rachel. about her courage in standing up to criminals, about the system that had failed her, about the importance of protecting witnesses. It had won an award. Rachel would have been proud. The community center was doing well. Better than ever, actually. Margaret had started a new program specifically for families in witness protection or dangerous situations. She'd worked with Robert and the FBI to create a safe space where people could get help without putting themselves at more risk. She'd turned her own experience into something that could help others. Robert had become a regular part of their lives. He was going to be a groomsman at the wedding. Uncle Robert, they called him now. He'd helped them through the worst time of their lives, and he'd become family because of it. One afternoon, Margaret was at the community center when a young woman came in. She looked scared, holding a toddler on her hip. "Can I help you?" Margaret asked gently. The woman hesitated. "I heard this is a safe place, that you help people who are in trouble." "That's right. Come on, let's talk in my office." As Margaret listened to the woman's story, another abusive situation, another child needing protection, she felt that familiar sense of purpose. This was her calling, not just running the center, but being there for people in their darkest moments, showing them that there was hope, that there were people who cared, just like she'd been there for Daniel and Lily. That evening, Margaret came home to find Daniel in the kitchen, attempting to cook dinner. Lily was in her high chair, banging a spoon and laughing at the chaos. "How's it going?" Margaret asked, trying not to smile at the mess. "I'm making pasta, or at least I'm trying to. Lily thinks it's hilarious." Margaret kissed him and picked up the spoon Lily had thrown on the floor. "You're doing great." "Liar." They laughed, and it felt good, easy, normal. This was what they'd fought for. This messy, imperfect, wonderful, normal life. After dinner, after Lily was in bed, Margaret and Daniel sat on their back porch, watching the sun set. It had become their ritual, this quiet time together at the end of each day. "I got a call from the prosecutor today," Daniel said. "Torres's trial is set for next month. They want me to testify again." Margaret tensed slightly. "Are you okay with that?" "Yeah, I want to. For Rachel. I want to make sure he pays for what he did. For what he ordered done. I'll be there with you. In the courtroom. Every day. I know. Thank you." They were quiet for a moment. Then Daniel said, "I've been thinking about Rachel a lot lately. About what she'd think of all this. Of us raising Lily together." "She'd be happy," Margaret said. "She'd know Lily is loved. That's all any parent wants. I wish she could see her. See how beautiful she is, how smart, how funny. Maybe she can. Maybe she's watching over all of us." Daniel smiled sadly. "I like to think so." Margaret took his hand. "You're a good father, Daniel. Rachel would be so proud of you." "I'm trying. Some days I still feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. That's parenting. Nobody knows what they're doing. We just love them and do our best and hope it's enough." 2 weeks later, Margaret and Daniel got married. It was a small ceremony in the community center's garden. Just close friends and family. Robert was there, of course. Margaret's staff came. Some of Daniel's colleagues from the newspaper, and Lily, the star of the show, in a tiny white dress stealing everyone's hearts. Margaret wore a simple dress, nothing fancy. Daniel wore a suit. And when they said their vows, promising to love and support each other, to be partners in raising Lily, to face whatever challenges came their way together, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Robert gave a toast at the reception. "I've known Margaret for years, and I've never seen her as happy as she is today. Daniel, you and Lily brought her back to life. And Margaret, you gave them a home when they needed one most. You're proof that families aren't always made the traditional way. Sometimes they're made in the middle of chaos. Born out of courage and love and the willingness to risk everything for each other. Here's to your family. May it grow stronger every day." Everyone raised their glasses. Margaret looked at Daniel, at Lily in her arms, at all the people who'd supported them through everything. She felt overwhelmed with gratitude. After the reception, after everyone had gone home, Margaret and Daniel put Lily to bed together. They stood over her crib watching her sleep. "She's going to ask about her mother someday," Daniel said quietly. "About Rachel. About what happened. And we'll tell her," Margaret said. "We'll tell her that her mother was brave and strong, that she loved Lily more than anything, that she gave her life to protect her, and that her last wish was for Lily to be safe and loved. She is loved, so loved, I know." They walked back to their own bedroom, this room they now shared in this house they'd made a home, 6 months ago, Margaret had been alone. 10 years of loneliness, of grief, of just going through the motions. Now she had everything. A husband, a daughter, a purpose, a family. "Thank you," she whispered to Daniel as they got ready for bed. "For what? For showing up at my door that night. For trusting me. For giving me a second chance at this." Daniel pulled her close. "Thank you for opening that door. For not turning us away. For saving us. We saved each other, and that was the truth. They'd all saved each other. Daniel had saved Lily from danger. Margaret had saved both of them from having nowhere to go. And together they'd saved each other from loneliness, from grief, from lives half-lived. Lily had brought them together. This tiny baby who'd lost so much but gained so much too. She'd created a family out of strangers. She'd given them all a reason to fight, to hope, to love again. Margaret thought about that rainy November night 7 months ago. The desperate pounding on her door. The bleeding man with a baby. The choice she'd made to help instead of turning away. That choice had changed everything. It had put her in danger, turned her life upside down, forced her to break rules and take risks and step way outside her comfort zone. But it had also brought her here, to this moment, to this family, to this beautiful, messy, imperfect life that was more than she'd ever dreamed of having again. Sometimes life gives you a second chance when you least expect it. Sometimes hope arrives bloodstained and desperate at your door at midnight. Sometimes the family you're meant to have isn't the one you planned for.